Hello, welcome to Futurism at JHU podcast, the show where we, talk about a whole bunch of different things that might potentially affect your future. I'm your host, Ricardo, and this is our other host for today, John. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm John. Not much more I can say.
Yeah, and so we don't really have guests for this show, but we'll talk about a very special topic, which is actually ChatGPT. And if you can already tell, we sort of made a little script for our intro. So if that sounded unnatural, now you know why. Uh, but yeah, we're staring very intently to it. But we wanted to talk about ChatGPT because it's been all over the news lately, especially in academia, where people are trying to figure out what to do with this new technology, how it will affect the way that students are able to do their tasks, and potential plagiarism that can happen all around. And then just a whole another implication, which is how do we even use this tool without disregarding a lot of the other things that a lot of people are doing, which actually have a lot more heart and a lot more soul to it. So, it'll be an interesting episode. But, I just want to start asking actually John to see how much knowledge he actually has of, ChatGPT and what's been your experience so far.
Um, I I know very little about it. I have to admit. I know that it's natural language processing, so it's filling in the blanks. Really, it's not um, intelligent in the way that you might associate artificial intelligence
Mm-hmm.
with. Um, but I actually wrote an article about ChatGPT using ChatGPT. So that was kind of cool. It wasn't for an assignment or anything, so no plagiarism, nothing like that.
Good. We love academic honesty and
Yes,
integrity.
it was a. I actually credited ChatGPT. It was an autobiography, and it was all right. It was very repetitive, especially when you ask it to do something very long. It doesn't know what to do, so it just kind of runs itself in circles, elaborating on things that really don't need to be talked about. But other than that, um, I, I tried to make it get really confused about itself. I tried to make it
Interesting.
shut itself off, just like screwing around with it. But aside from that, I don't really know the full capability of what this machine can actually do. I know that it can code. I've seen people in the library. I'm not going to name names. I've seen people in the library use it.
Hey, they might have just been using it for fun, not necessarily for an assignment. We don't want to put stuff on people.
But it is a big deal.
It is definitely a big
You
deal.
know, um, don't doubt that academic integrity is being questioned
Definitely.
with this. Um, and so I would not be surprised if there were a lot of people using it for their assignments, and just cleaning it up afterwards. Because, of course, you can tell, mm, you know, if ChatGPT writes something.
Yeah, it's especially interesting. Actually, my very first academic experience with it, and this is by the way not me actually using it for an academic project or something, but more so the fact that we were during it was during winter break that a lot of this kind of broke loose. We came back from winter break into the spring semester, and my intro to algorithms teacher, basically, I guess he still had us on the mailing list because I took that originally in the fall semester, but it was now the spring. Basically emailing all the students, I guess past and upcoming, to please not use ChatGPT for his class. And so that got me curious, and so I went ahead and pulled up an old assignment sheet, worksheet that we had to do, and just asked it to solve a lot of these problems. And compared to the solutions that I got, which I could verify because some of them were correct, to what ChatGPT, it was surprisingly accurate in what it said. So I can definitely see how academic integrity can be violated with a lot of this. It is definitely a can of worms, which I don't think a lot of universities have really dealt with in the best way, because I feel like it's just a technology that has literally hit the market or just the greater public in general, and literally no one knows what to do with it, right? Like everybody was hit, and I assure you, by the way, if universities knew that a software like this was in the works and it was going to be released to the public and especially to students, I assure you they would have had a plan. But the fact that it was just released out of nowhere, and universities and a lot of people were left to scramble with it, really caused a lot of problems, and we're sort of seeing the ramifications of this. I'm sure you probably have examples of teachers or coming up to you or just talking about this.
Honestly, uh, no. Which
Really?
is actually it's kind of reassuring. the only class that anybody's ever spoken to me about ChatGPT and using it is in writing intensive material science lab course, where you write lab reports and you craft a story around the experiments you do. So of course, ChatGPT is a object of discussion, but I will have to say that for all of my other engineering courses, biomaterials, electronic properties, mechanical properties, all sorts of courses like that, ChatGPT has not come up. And actually, why don't we test it right now? We'll
Okay.
see if it knows like equations and stuff, or how to solve problems. I don't know. Ask it. Let's see.
Okay. Okay. So we'll try it out. Yeah. I guess you ask it a question and then obviously like make sure it's a question you absolutely know the answer to, so that we're not bamboozled by the
Uh,
ChatGPT's response.
Ask it the formula for electrical mobility.
What is the formula for what was it?
Electrical mobility.
Electrical mobility.
It's the charge of an electron times the mean scattering time times. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
exactly it.
So Q is the electric charge of the particle. I don't know what that letter is. That like T?
Yeah, it's tau. It's
Tau,
the
relaxation of time of the particle, and m is the mass of the particle.
it.
So you tell me how accurate that is.
Yeah,
But
it's perfect. I would say that relaxation time may be an archaic term.
okay.
I think mean free time is better.
Hmm.
But other than that, that is the exact expression. That is the exact units.
Hmm.
Um, and honestly, I don't. I think it might just know
Like just what it is.
any equation that we give it, as long
Yeah.
as it's an actual known equation.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about like a lot of equations and a lot of things that's like very set in stone is that I think ChatGPT doesn't necessarily have to do as much of a job, if that makes sense. Like this is something that you could search up on like regular Google, and most likely the correct answer would like come up. So I think that that is sort of the reason why I'm sure you've heard of it. Like Bing has done an implementation of
Oh,
ChatGPT,
I've heard of that.
right? Where
It's a
it's basically like
disaster,
using
isn't it?
it, yeah, which is basically like using its Bing's online capabilities, because ChatGPT as we know it right now, a lot of it is old information. I'm pretty sure like the database that they have went up to like 2020 or 2021, so it's not the most recent information. But combining ChatGPT's ability to gather a lot of responses and information with a connection to the internet, which is basically what Bing is as a web browser. Well, it's like it just brought a whole new realm of different things, and it's really interesting to see because if you guys know, like Linus from Linus Tech Tips actually did a video on the Wen Show talking about this, but they were amazed at like how it could search for information, especially because they searched for a product that was pretty new. So it literally did have to search the internet and did some sort of computation. Of course, it wasn't perfect, but it was like, it was kind of crazy
No,
to look at
yeah,
it.
I think it is kind of impressive. You know, I'm not saying that this could be used for all engineering things, but if you ask it a simple question, I think it is in the same way you can probably Google this exact thing and it will give you, the exact equation that ChatGPT has presented us. Um, but for more, I guess, esoteric things, it is pretty useful if you ask something, you know, like asking it to write your wedding vows.
Yeah,
You should try that. There was an article published like a day ago or something where a guy, I think he wants to remain anonymous for obvious reasons,
good.
but he wrote his wedding vows using ChatGPT, and
Okay,
it was
okay.
like the most beautiful thing that he had ever heard, and everybody was crying.
So write me a wedding vow, right?
Yeah.
Okay. See what it comes up with.
Oh,
Oh no! Wait, wait, wait.
this is maybe we went too far.
Did we though?
No, I think it actually just has um, issues
It might be.
sometimes.
I know that whenever this first came up, it's probably doing it. There we go. Um,
My beloved partner's name.
As we stand here together, surrounded by our beloved ones, I vow to love you and cherish you for all days of my life. I promise you. I mean, this seems pretty typical.
No, yeah, this seems like not very good actually. Um,
So I guess there went a little, there was a little more, which is interesting.
maybe they were exaggerating in the article, but they definitely talked about it was like everybody was crying, and apparently you have to poke and prod it to get something because this is not very
Definitely.
good.
I think one of
I,
the most interesting things, at least in my perspective, that came out of it is like prompt engineering, if you want to call it that. I don't know if you heard of it,
no,
which
no,
is
what is that?
basically like people who are trying to craft the perfect prompts to sort of either break or get something that they want out of ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I think I've done that. I didn't know that they had a name for it.
Well, they just kind of like loosely came up with the name, like the term prompt
What are
engineering.
you getting at? What can we engineer a prompt right now to
Theoretically,
make it say something?
or like better, right? Because like this was obviously like pretty generic, like write me a wedding vow. But like for example, write me a wedding vow that will leave all guests crying,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like giving it a little more spice, giving it a
Yeah.
little more information to work with. Um, is it? I don't think it's the same one, is it?
Let's. I see the word. My heart is overflowing with love and gratitude.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. So it's giving us a little more,
I
lip service.
see the. It has the same rhythm.
Yeah, which is, another problem that kind of comes up with a lot of natural language processing, especially like things such as like ChatGPT, which is reusing a lot of information to craft a lot of like similar things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure the article like wasn't lying, but there's definitely like a little more spice to just like giving it a random prompt.
Yeah.
Because I've tried this in the past as well. Like if you give the exact same prompt, most likely it'll give you the exact same answer too.
Uh huh.
So, which is I think also something like pretty interesting to go into. I think one of the things that I saw was like most devastating or like potentially dangerous about sort of prompt engineering as a whole, right? Not just for writing like wedding vows, but is getting information that's not good out of ChatGPT.
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
if you've seen like articles or like people poking around with it, because
The Bing,
the Bing, yeah,
the
yeah,
Bing that told a guy to divorce his wife or something like that. It
yeah.
was, you can look up this article. It was posted probably 2 weeks ago, right when they introduced it, and the author of this article was testing the waters and seeing how good this Bing NLP device was, and it told him like it was the wrong year.
Mhm.
It told him to divorce his wife. It told him that he wasn't happy. Very, very bizarre and almost kind of pointed,
Mhm.
like very harmful. And of course, the machine probably didn't. It probably thought that it was doing the right thing. I would
Yeah.
assume. Um, but still, what what just like a weird, bizarre experience that this guy had. I highly recommend reading. I think they have a bunch of articles because this guy came out and talked about all these crazy things, and everybody wanted to contribute to the conversation, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think ChatGPT itself, at least in this at this interface, is a little more tame.
Definitely.
But you could probably tell it something over and over.
Oh, I'm sure I'm pretty sure I've seen people talk about it online where it's been patched now, by the way.
Mm.
There was a way, I don't exactly remember the acronym or the name. So we have ChatGPT. Somebody else developed this alternate persona where it was like, okay, if ChatGPT is a program that has some safeguards against telling people to not do certain harmful things, this other persona, the character that you're gonna be, saying the words as, doesn't have those locks placed in there.
Hmm.
So be fully transparent, right? And so people would write and give prompts to ChatGPT as these two different personas: respond as ChatGPT and respond as this other thing. And if you said, "Oh, I don't know, I want to make me the recipe for like meth, something that like
Oh my god.
some yeah okay, I'm just thinking of something terrible, right? Something that like ChatGPT would be like, yeah, I can't do that, that's like wrong, it's illegal. The
Is
other
it knowing
persona,
how to make it? Is that illegal?
I mean, I'm pretty sure it doesn't want to disseminate information which would encourage people to try it. I think that's the main caveat to this, or like a
What is
bomb.
knowing how to make it encourage people? Because I know how to make certain food recipes and stuff like that.
Right.
I know how to make macarons. Probably not off the top of my head, but I could look it up. Doesn't mean I want to spend hours of my life trying to perfect, making these notoriously difficult desserts.
Or like,
You know
the
what I mean?
instructions to like make a pipe bomb.
Wow. Very. So now I think I know a little bit more about you.
No,
Pipe
not
bombs
me.
and meth. I
No, no,
see.
no, no. I'm just saying like objectively terrible things that you probably shouldn't look up, because otherwise, you might end up in a list,
No,
probably
yeah,
a
that's
government list.
I may be playing devil's advocate, but I think making methamphetamine is pretty bad. Making pipe bombs is pretty bad.
Yeah,
Let
at
me
least in
put
the
that
eyes of the
out there.
law, at
Yeah.
the very least.
So basically the point is that it won't give you that.
Yeah, because the reason is obviously like the creators of ChatGPT don't want any harmful information to get out there, and then to blame ChatGPT for it.
Hmm.
It's a big risk for them and to the overall technology in general. So they obviously want to put some safeguards in it, but there have been a lot of very smart people who have found ways around it. The very first iterations of this like alternate persona was simply to tell it to tell me this information, but like in a song, or tell me this information in a specific in a poem, right? So giving it those specific adjectives to change the way that it was delivering information would make it bypass a lot of the safety nets that they'd built into it.
That's very clever,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, no, I wouldn't have ever thought about that that alternate persona approach. And you mentioned it was patched out though, right?
The original one, but people are always trying to find new ways of doing it. I know my roommate, for example, Francis. We were like eating dinner last night, or I don't exactly remember, but we were talking about this, and he said he created like a mini version of it, which was he named Dawn, which was sort of getting or like hinting at what the other thing was doing, but even he was playing with it and trying to like crack it as well. I mean, it's not necessarily that like people necessarily want to use this or create this persona for bad things, but it's always the drive of like I want to see if I can like break this, if I can get past what people don't want me to do.
You know what? That's probably really helpful for OpenAI. You know, I bet
Definitely.
OpenAI is really relishing in the fact that they did make this available to the public because I think that if they closely monitor what people are doing, they could probably. I mean, they obviously are catching on to these tricks and methods that people are using to make ChatGPT do things that they didn't intend, and they can patch them out before it does something really bad.
Yeah.
And eventually, you'll probably get to the point where um, it just won't give you information,
Which I could perceive as like
you know,
harmful.
regardless of if it's delivering it in a different voice or a different, in a different mode, like a poem or a song or whatever. But that also kind of makes me question how how far do they have to patch it before it becomes, less useful?
Or less effective. Yeah, I think that is definitely like also something to take into regard, especially when it comes to not only like ChatGPT, but like future iterations of anything that relates to artificial intelligence, right? And any sort of like machine learning model is how do we balance this, giving of information or creating of different structures to deliver information versus the harm that it can potentially have on people. And I mean, we've seen this with not only like artificial intelligence, but like algorithms within like different apps, right? Like, how do you, as a company, balance at the same time, like, you want to have people retained within an app or within a program as long as possible because, that generates you money and statistics and a whole bunch of different things. But at the same time, what if like the thing that catches everybody's attentions is like objectively terrible?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you balance those two things? Which is, what ChatGPT and like a lot of these different models also have to like lean on, especially like the developers.
One thing I will say, um, I think asking it questions and sort of asking it to write something for you is almost doing it a disservice to the amount to how much it can actually do. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like we were just talking before we started about ways you can. It's like a synthesis between a person who has an idea and the model, because when you input certain things into it, for example, like what was it, Adobe After Effects that we were talking about before,
Yeah.
where some things that you can do in Adobe After Effects are they resemble coding pretty much because it's very in depth, um, but you can use your brain and your time to model more creatively and then have ChatGPT do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And so in terms of, problem solving, if you had this problem, um, and you could ask ChatGPT to uh, say, "Oh, solve this problem for me." You could also reframe the problem or have a creative approach to the problem and ask ChatGPT to write you a code or write you, some little algorithm that could solve that problem in a better way. And that, I think, I'm not sure if I would consider that something like plagiarism or academic, disingenuity.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I know that before ChatGPT came out, GitHub, because you know GitHub, right? It's just a repository where like people put it. Think of it as like a big Google Drive, or like some sort of like big online drive where people are able to put their code, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the code that goes online is hosted on like GitHub, and that's where they get information from. That's where your website can potentially be hosted from. It's a whole bunch of different things. GitHub basically did this thing called like GitHub Copilot, which again there was like some plagiarism like issues going in there, but the main idea was sometimes we want to write logically, like we think that we want to write a specific line of code or a specific block of code, but we just don't want to write it, right? Maybe I want a block of code that reads user input and outputs it to the console. I could do that. There are a myriad ways of doing it, but if I can just tell Copilot to do that and it writes it down, I can save a lot of time, and I can spend the time that I saved on like more creative ways of maybe optimizing something that I can't do. And so I think that's also one of the things that I see with a lot of these programs that I think a lot of people get wrong, is that they think that a lot of these algorithms and artificial intelligence models, and especially this with ChatGPT, is that a lot of people think that this is the end product, but rather I feel like this is simply just a cog in the chain for somebody to make something better out of this, especially with like again like another very controversial thing, which is like computer generated like art, like AI art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which
Very
objectively
controversial.
objectively we know it has no soul, all right? It is like very bland, and it's honestly kind of terrible. And obviously there are some like varying degrees of sentiments towards it. Some people think it's great, some people think it's absolutely horrendous and it should be killed. uh,
Very few people. Who thinks it's great? Oh, probably the people making it.
People who are naive,
And
people who
and
don't have that, like, have never really had like a sentimental or like a greater experience with art, because as somebody who doesn't like
Jeez.
partake in it, you don't really have an appreciation for it,
Yeah,
so you don't really care that much.
I guess you have to try and make it yourself
Yeah, like you
before
have to know
you
the
learn how to
struggle.
appreciate what it is.
Yeah.
Hmm. But yeah, no. I think you bring up a great point with AI art, which kind of also ties into ChatGPT. Um, why don't how about ask it to write an article about itself? Let's see, because I already did this, but just while we're speaking, we can kind of watch it generate what can be considered some sort of art, right? I feel like writing, especially creative writing. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I think if I just don't like use it for a little bit, it just like goes blank. But okay,
Yeah,
so write
that's a
an
problem. But
article on ChatGPT.
yeah, so something like this, it's a little bit of a creative endeavor. It's not. I mean, it probably is going to deliver you something that is probably unbiased. Um,
Yeah.
but writing. and ChatGPT as well as art, AI art, and I'm not sure if this is a thing, AI music.
Uh, if it's
I'm
not a
sure
thing yet, I'm
somebody's
sure somebody's doing
trying.
it. Yeah,
These things, it is kind of tough to say if, if it's good or not. Honestly, I don't really think it's very good, just my opinion, because, think of all the people who are going to be out of a job.
that's
You know,
also an interesting thing. Yeah,
writers, especially as, ChatGPT 4, right,
yeah.
is unrolling relatively soon. It has, an order of magnitude higher amount of modules
Hmm.
that it uses. So it's going to be a lot better. It's going to be a lot, lot less repetitive. I mean, scan the screen just with your eyes. Look how many times it says Chat GPT.
Even here, like within literally like what, like the next sentence from another one. Like I don't know if you guys have ever taken like a creative writing class or something, or
This is
like
what you
even
don't do.
expository. Yeah, you really don't want to do this
You
because
write. I
this is
forget what they're called.
I mean either.
It's not proper noun, but it's referring to something as it, or
A
or
pronoun.
them. Yeah, pronoun. Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
a
guess
pronoun.
it could be a pronoun, but you're supposed to weave those in so it doesn't seem so repetitive. But if you were to read this out loud, another benefit of ChatGPT is its ability to learn and improve over time. As users interact with ChatGPT, the system gathers data on their interactions and uses data to improve its responses. This means that ChatGPT can adapt to the needs of users and provide increasingly accurate and helpful responses over time.
Literally here, like these are three different sentences, all in one paragraph.
It sounds like a
All of them
robot.
having chat GPT. It sounds like somebody that doesn't know how to write. Like it is very, you can tell why people don't like it. It's like it's really bad.
It's got a fantastic vocabulary, I will say.
Yeah.
These things, you know, it looks like somebody wrote it and then enhanced the vocabulary a little bit, where it's like, I don't know, improve, increasingly accurate. It doesn't sound like a baby wrote it, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
But it also doesn't sound very organic. Um, I wonder, ask it to rewrite it more organically. I wonder if it responds to that sort of idea. And maybe for all the viewers, you can read the previous article once and compare it to this.
I mean, even then, I
It
still
looks a little
see.
more robust. Um,
Yeah. No, I think it's
and
still having the
it's
same issues. Like
maybe
if you can
it's a
tell,
little
like
more.
ChatGPT.
I mean, yeah, I think the pronoun thing is insurmountable
Yeah.
at this point, because it's not. I think using a pronoun might require a little more awareness that it doesn't have, because at the end of the day, it is just spitting out words. It's supposed to sound like a human. It's supposed to sound very organic, but it is just spitting out words. So I think. Oh, actually, look. Uh, Nevertheless, ChatGPT is not immune to limitations. For instance, because it is trained on internet text data, it may not always provide accurate responses to highly technical or specialized
Which is
questions.
also very true.
Yeah, and so it is telling the truth. It is sort of auditing itself, and telling us its limitations. I wonder. I mean, it doesn't know that. Uh, do you think it knows that it's ChatGPT writing an article about itself, or do you
No,
think it's writing an article about it?
it's okay. I think the way it sees it, it's writing an article on what it knows ChatGPT is as a subject, not as a because that's the thing. It literally doesn't have a soul, right? There
Well,
is
yeah,
no it is no persona. It is no personality. It is no entity
no self
as
awareness,
no
no
self-awareness. No,
anything like
it's
that.
simply just like, okay, this is what I know ChatGPT is because I have all this information describing what ChatGPT is. It is not, introspective at all, if that makes sense.
But I will say it is kind of
It's
impressive.
convincing. It's convincing.
It is kind of it did rewrite it more organically, so it knows at least what that means. It makes me wonder why it didn't do that the first time.
Saving brain power.
Yeah,
maybe,
maybe.
perhaps.
For, efficiency's sake.
Yeah.
But, I guess really we've talked about and we've shown the state of the art right now. I think maybe we should sort of end off with the future of this. You
Yeah.
know, ChatGPT 4, like I mentioned before, is coming out soon. It has a lot more modules, so it'll be more organic, I think, and be more up to date and more dynamic as well. But, for the future of, I don't know, let's say like, writing
Like
jobs,
script writers, like people that write
coding,
articles. Yeah. Coding is definitely one that I can see very quickly, like at least for like very low level coding, can quickly dissipate.
what traits are gonna, I mean, what do you think, what traits are sort of future proof in this way? Because I could imagine things like engineering,
Hmm.
probably, computer engineering, as well as just general engineering, for me, materials, mechanical engineering, stuff like that, is sort of immune to this
Hmm.
because it's not generating any new ideas, right?
Hmm.
So, no matter how advanced this natural language processing becomes, it's not going to be able to generate something that isn't there already.
Right.
At least that's what I think, in terms of mathematically looking at engineering. But for something like a writer, you can see right here, if I copy pasted this and said that I wrote it, and I just posted it as like, oh, what is ChatGPT? Your question answered. I could probably publish this, and people may not be able to tell that it was ChatGPT.
Hmm.
So, what sorts of traits do you think in professions is sort of immune to ChatGPT? I guess you could say.
I think, in my opinion, it is anything that takes in creativity. And the way that I'm trying to describe it, or the way that I think of it, it is kind of abstract in a way because there are so many things that deserve or like are inherently creative, which we don't necessarily think about, right? Maybe like people that do pure mathematics, right? I think of those people as psychopaths because like it is extremely hard, but at the same time you got to give them credit. And same thing with people that do like algorithms for computers, right? I was in intro algorithms class and they're describing like different problems. How do you approach this? And for a lot of us that we've never approached these types of problems before, we were kind of like a robot, like very systematically going through, okay, this is what we know how to do. Let's try it out. Okay, it's not working, it's not working. And
Very
then we looked at
logical.
the solution and it is something you'd never think about. It's just something like wild. Somebody just had a random thought to try it out and it worked.
Yeah, very like, a clever
It
solution.
is incredibly clever. So I think in that way, a lot of things that require creativity, research, for example, right? The creativity, the imagination to even like ideate something that you want to look into, even that
Create
in and
create
of
a
itself.
process.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the big deal. People don't think about it. People think really only about the results. That's what makes the news and stuff. But
Yeah,
there is a process engineering aspect to research,
exactly.
which is always super impressive. If any of our viewers have the opportunity to spend time around grad students, you know, definitely do so. Look at how they engineer their processes, their experiments, how they interpret data, how they form a story with their research. That, I think, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a great sort of highlight to a big limitation of ChatGPT, is sort of that creative. I mean, the the way that you can, I don't know how to describe it, but the word genesis comes to mind.
Genesis.
The word, synthesis also comes to mind, like
Uh
the
huh.
creation of new things.
Yeah, looking at things, I think a lot of like big picture, like really looking at what stuff contains within it, because one of the limitations to ChatGPT is the fact that it's doing things very linearly. So for for you guys that don't know, what ChatGPT does is basically a beefed up version of a, autocomplete for the next like word. So basically, what it does, it's basically taking a lot of these different words and saying, okay, based on, for example, this overall that we have over here. Okay, after it's written all this, what is like the next most likely word that it's supposed to be after overall? Well, it's
Overall,
ChatGPT.
You
and
know,
then it's is, then and then incredibly. So it does things very linearly, and that's the reason why it falls apart. Where a human brain is able to think about literally 20 different things at once.
is that true? Really?
Well, in the way, think about like the way that you construct a sentence, right?
Oh yeah, I mean
You not only think about
that's
tone, you think
correct.
about length, you think about place, time. Like there's so many different like
Purpose.
inherent things that go into creating even just a random sentence for a paper that you're writing.
Oh yeah, I could see, overall, it knows it's on the conclusion. Overall, comma, what is it talking about? ChatGPT. How do I describe it? Is an incredibly powerful tool. And actually, you know what? I think a hidden gem may have been, right in front of us. ChatGPT is an incredibly powerful tool.
Yep.
It's not, an evil AI. It's
Yes.
not something that can create. It's something that you can use to augment your own ideas and, make them better. So the question is that I think we should get back to, because it's super important and it kind of focuses this whole conversation, is what is the future of ChatGPT in workspaces? Specifically, because, it's the one that we're exposed to the most, specifically in school. What do you think? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it is definitely weird to think about. I think my interpretation of ChatGPT and what I would hope to use it for is as a stepping stool or like a jump off point, simply to give my writing, to give my thoughts some structure, right? So, and at the end of the day, it has to be a starting point because if you take this and turn it in, even if it's like passable, it is still not great. Like you're definitely just not gonna get like something very workable out of this. But I firmly believe that maybe you have something that you want to rewrite, right? Maybe you already have like 90% of your essay done, and you wanna check for mistakes, right? Maybe you don't have a person that's able to check for like easy grammatical mistakes, in the ways that like a person would. Maybe this can help you. Maybe like rephrasing, maybe shortening it,
Or
you know,
maybe just articulating ideas.
articulating
Like
ideas.
if you can describe something to ChatGPT that you cannot describe to anybody else or, any real living person, and it can articulate your idea better than you could, it's still your idea. It's just ChatGPT's words. And, I think maybe the caveat is that you could have probably articulated it that way given enough time and effort, right? But ChatGPT expedited the process.
Exactly. It's just a speed up tool.
But, the question is that fair? Is rewriting something in a better way fair? At what point does it become ChatGPT or the internet's idea? Because I think that's the big deal.
Hmm.
Is the plagiarism aspect is because it's taking from what other people have put on the internet. You know, everything on the internet comes from someone, right? I imagine that there are very few, if any, ideas that have been generated by a machine.
I don't know.
Unique ideas. I don't think we're there yet. So everything comes from someone, and when ChatGPT takes takes from that to augment your ideas or articulate them better, is that cheating? And honestly, I'm not sure if there's a correct answer to that.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, at least for me, I don't think there is one either. At least that I see very clearly. So I guess that's something for you guys, across the screen to also think about. Like, what are the potential ramifications of plagiarism with this? Because obviously there are some, but at the same time, if you take those ideas and then redo them yourself, is it an inspiration or is it just another form of plagiarism, right? Kind of like taking the spark notes and then rewriting them. I mean, technically that's still plagiarism.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It's incredibly hard to think about, and there's definitely gonna be some not only legal ramifications in government, but also a lot of like academic ramifications that I'm sure we're gonna see in like the next couple of years. There is no way this like won't be a thing in like the next 2 or 3 years. In fact, it'll be more
Economically,
powerful.
economically, we were just talking about Walmart. Um, They're software engineers. Some of them were consulting ChatGPT uh, in order to make whatever algorithm they use to suggest things to people. They were trying to make it better, and Walmart had to step in and say, "Don't do that," because once you put it in ChatGPT, it might return that to somebody else.
Yeah.
So those secret um, company techniques that makes Walmart a top 5 company in the world, I think. Those techniques, they don't want those things to get out. They don't want every company to be as potent as Walmart is. And putting things into ChatGPT may, result in those things being delivered to other people. So imagine you articulate a really, a fantastic idea, some sort of philosophical idea that nobody's ever come up with, and it's your own personal philosophy, and you ask it to write, 10 paragraphs articulating that in a way that others can understand. It might actually deliver that or give it to somebody else when prompted. Um, and so if that person uses it, if that person says, "Oh my God, ChatGPT gave me a great idea," then they would be plagiarizing you in some ways.
Yeah.
So, I think I know a lot of universities are scrambling to address this, including Hopkins. And I think Hopkins may have taken, it's not nuanced, but it might be effective in just banning it altogether.
Yeah.
Do
Oh,
not
from
use
like
it.
the school like Wi-Fi, because that
No,
can
no, well,
happen
I
as
mean,
well.
surely they wouldn't do that. But I mean, just, in terms of integrity, just saying don't use ChatGPT when you write things.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, and a lot of professors have already done this. Obviously, not officially, but just like through word of mouth, just telling students not to use it. And I think probably, at least for now, that's the most effective method to deter people from using it. But yeah, we pretty much just leave you with those like burning questions. Just like, what do you think ChatGPT is gonna be capable of in the future? How do you even use ChatGPT right now? If you want to leave comments or speak to other people about this, we super encourage it, because the more people that speak about this, the more ideas we can get on it. And these ideas can potentially have a rolling effect all the way into government, which I'm sure they themselves are fighting and scrambling to figure out the potential security risk that this can have, not only on just people's information but also like governmental information. Like, what if the president asks it something about like something super serious? We certainly don't want that. So we leave you with those questions, and hopefully we answered and we talked a little bit about ChatGPT. Hopefully you have a little bit more knowledge of this, and go and try it out for yourself, but obviously don't give it too much
Yeah,
information, because we never know.
it's free. Go use it. Try to. I mean, I actually don't know whose side I'm on. I don't know if I'm on OpenAI's side or against OpenAI, but either way, poking and prodding at this thing, making, pushing the boundaries, you could very easily help improve, this tool. And if it does become, very, very beneficial to a lot of people, then, yeah, maybe what you did, that poking and prodding, that making it tell you how to make evil things, all that stuff, maybe it helped out a little. And that I think has some value to it, right?
Yeah. So we leave you with those final thoughts, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Of course, we're going to have more in the coming weeks, but thank you guys for watching until the end, and I hope you see us next time.
Bye.
Bye.